what is the history of Imperial Brazil?
No, that's a good question. Basically, in the year of our Lord, 1807, Portugal was invaded by the French under Napoleon, and the Portuguese royal family fled to their big American possession, Brazil, and they set up shop in the then capital, Rio de Janeiro. Well, as we know, Napoleon was defeated, and most of the Portuguese family went home, but the King of Portugal left his oldest son to hold the fort in Brazil. Now, at this time, Spanish America, for various reasons, was falling victim to independence, and a lot of the Brazilian oligarchy folk felt the same way. So, what the prince, Don Pedro, decided to do was to put himself at the head of the independence movement, which he did.
What
And
does that
so
mean?
Brazil, well, it means that Brazil became independent from Portugal.
Oh,
But
okay.
he was the son of the king, the oldest son, and so he proclaimed himself Emperor of Brazil, Dom Pedro I. Well, then what happened was his father died, and he was the oldest son. So he went back to Portugal to become king, and he left his son, who was a little boy at the time, and would grow up to become Dom Pedro II as the emperor. And in 1840, he came of age and became emperor in fact as well as in name. And he ruled as emperor until something bizarre and terrible happened. In 1889, he ordered the slaves freed, and that was the end of slavery in Brazil. But it caused a great deal of resentment on the part of the slaveholders. So the following year, when he was out of the country seeking medical treatment in France, they pulled a coup and overthrew the Brazilian Empire. And that was how Brazil became a republic.
Okay, so that begs an obvious question. Why don't liberals view Dom Pedro II as an
Yeah,
Abraham Lincoln abolitionist type figure? Hero, even.
um, because he was an emperor.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing was that when he was overthrown, there was a revolt by a lot of former slaves in his favor, which was put down very bloodily. And again, where you wouldn't have heard this in school, and the brain dead people that dominate education would not tell you about it. Judith Katz would never mention it, I'm sure.
You
She
know, you,
probably doesn't know who Dom Pedro II is. Didn't he have a restaurant somewhere, on the Lower East Side? This little Portuguese place. I'm sure I passed it. Dom Pedro's. That's what it is, right? No, Miss Katz. Dom Pedro II was, in fact, the Emperor of Brazil. Brazil? That's a game like canasta, right? No, it's a country in South America.
it wasn't just that he was an emperor, probably, but he was Catholic, right?
He certainly was.
And that we cannot have any Catholic abolitionists. We can't have, because that's confusing. Because Catholicism, the Catholic Church, is in favor of oppression. We know
Yeah,
this, so we can't have that, right? We can't have him as a sympathetic figure.
no. But since there's really nothing bad we can say about him, he simply goes down the memory hole.
That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. That's okay.